landing zones. Whether we're talking about the bustling center of industry that is Area 18 on ArcCorp or the Hurston family's base of power in Lorville, landing zones set the tone for life on their respective planets. And on Microtech, the planet that is farthest from in the Stanton system, work is in progress on a luxurious domed city with open spaces designed to inspire the creativity and productiveness of the people that work there. Now, beginning now and over the next several months, we're going to follow the progress of development on this next landing zone as it makes its journey into the Star Citizen universe. To get things started, let's take a trip now to New Babbage, currently in the white box stage.
So today we're going to look at the white box for New Babbage. So here we have the Microtech Plaza, which is one of the locations that we've been working on now for New Babbage. What we've been focusing on here is kind of making a different kind of interior experience for the PU, where everything is sort of centralized within one big construct. This is all designed by Fred. Fred dealt with this one, so you have to just interject whenever you have some of your...
Sure.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, I mean, New Babbage is going to be placed on Microtech, this planet with a very harsh climate. Basically, what Microtech did was build these domes where tons of light can come in. It has this sort of greenhouse feeling. You can see that also by looking at all these exotic plants they have in here. So this cylindrical design, of the domes, lends itself very well to a symmetrical layout, with this very prominent structure in the center, which is the flagship store of Microtech, and other shops and offices placed around it. It's basically two rings, like one outer ring and a second smaller ring right around this central structure, the factory line of this flagship store. And you have these passages that go into each cardinal direction, so you can quickly reach whatever shop or office you want to get to.
Yeah. So when we're whiteboxing this, a lot of the things that we care about are performance is one, trying to minimize fluff gameplay space, still make it a sort of interesting location, because these are all the things that we define now, and if we don't get them right in this stage of development, then later on it's really hard to go back and change that stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, this is still pretty much early days. I mean, this is nowhere final what we're going to look at, but there's already quite a bit of work that has gone into this location. A lot of work that the players usually don't see because it's going on behind the scenes. I mean, at this point, the narrative team, for example, has already written down what they would expect from a lore point of view from this landing zone. Art department has created concept arts to give visual direction and define those visual key beats for the landing zone. And also as designers, I mean, we've decided on what we expect from a gameplay point of view from the LZ. And basically all the departments have already come together and locked that part, basically that plan down.
Okay, so that was a look at New Babbage. So with that, thank you, Fred, for coming to my desk to talk about New Babbage.
Hey, thank you.
Alpha 3.6 introduced several features that lay the groundwork for enhanced gameplay as Star Citizen's development continues through 3.7 and beyond. And one of the new aspects of ship gameplay recently added were misfires, or the chance for our components to not do what they're supposed to do when we want them to do it. We asked David and Johnny from the vehicle feature team to shed some light on what can misfire and why this feature, along with others that are coming down the line, can add depth and consequence to gameplay decisions regarding your ships and vehicles.
So in 3.6, we have this new feature called misfires, or faults in ships. And we've seen a lot of discussion as to what that is and how that actually works. So we're going to take a little bit of time to sort of clear that up and go into what like a misfire is, right, Johnny? So can you tell us what a misfire is?
Yeah, so as you said, a misfire is a fault in the behavior of an item. It will happen semi-randomly, but it is a consequence of your playing with the item. So if you've been overheating it too much, or it's just old, the longer that you go without doing anything about it, the more likely it is to misfire and behave differently.
So in 3.6, the way we're going to communicate misfires is through a UI notification on your ship's HUD. We want it to be front and center. Something is happening, you need to do something about that. But there's not a lot of information, right? So we're going to, in the future, go a little bit more deeper, right?
The items that misfire or will misfire in 3.6 will be power plants, there'll be shields, thrusters and coolers will all misfire. and they'll misfire at different levels as well. So the earliest kind of misfire is just a warning, effectively, like a little indicator on your car dashboard.
It's worth going over why we would want this, right?
Oh yeah.
The idea is that we want to have some consequence to the long-term misuse of items, right? I think that's pretty appropriate. So in the PU, when you have the ship, you can sort of develop a character to it, because maybe you lean toward using one more item than another, and it gets a little bit, rickety because it's been used too much and stuff like that. And that will really help to bring a little bit more personality to the ship and give you consequences to decisions, so that it's not obvious what the best decision is always.
Definitely. If your power plant misfires and suddenly has half the capability, and then you have to go and manage the consequences of the misfire as well.
It's worth clarifying that there is a step to that process, so you can't just get a critical misfire and nowhere, right?
Yeah. So the things that cause misfires will be the heat, the distortion, the degradation, and the damage that go into your item. And so if you've all of a sudden get hit by an EMP and you just go to 100% distortion, you won't get a critical instantly.
Sure.
There's caveats everywhere all over the system to try and avoid these kind of unfair feeling mechanics.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Okay, that sounds really good. So the idea, as you can see, is that the system is not unfair. We put a lot of effort into making sure that it's not unfair. And the result will hopefully be system gameplay with your ships that is a little bit more consequential, I guess. And it'll, help to make that whole experience with ships work together, and all of your decisions actually matter.
So life in Stanton means navigating the various industrial, commercial, and extra-legal factions that vie for control and influence throughout the star system. And learning who the players are, and what they're after, and why they do the things they do may someday make the difference between prosperous adventure or an unfortunate accident. Let's check in with Dave and Will as they shed some light on the life and lore under the law of Stanton.
Thank you. Hey, welcome to Turing Stop and another conversation with the lore team, this time about law, the new law system in 3.6, just released. Very exciting. It's our first kind of main crack at establishing the jurisdictions across Stanton's system.
Yep. So we kind of have this new system involved to basically kind of give consequence to some of the sort of outlaw activities. So yeah, this is the first time we've been able to kind of create a system around it where you have kind of consequences and for your actions and stuff like that, based off of smuggling, and kind of laying the groundwork for what's to come down the road.
And what's really kind of unique and fun about the Star Citizen approach is this idea of jurisdictions that we have, that there's a lot of different layers, right? So the UEE is our main governing body for legal space, and as you're flying around, it's their laws and guidelines that kind of apply to everything.
Yeah, if you're in a UEE system, there are sort of basic laws that kind of everybody has to abide by, but the fun thing about it is that all the planets kind of get to tweak the laws a little bit, as long as they're kind of not, outright betraying some of the original laws, can kind of govern themselves the way they want to do it.
Yeah, and that comes down to our planets having their own security forces, and too, Hurston has their Hurston security.
Yeah.
There's Crusader security, and so all these different local police forces enforce the local law, whereas you have the Advocacy and the UEE military to enforce the greater law.
Yeah.
And it's real interesting for players flying around. Something that's legal in one world may not be legal on the other worlds and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, that factors into sort of our jurisdiction thing with, you compare and contrast kind of Lorville versus New Babbage on Microtech, whereas Lorville is obviously much more kind of maniacal Iron Fist type control. New Babbage is a little bit laxer on some of their laws because, again, that sort of Silicon Valley thing where it's a lot of innovation and creativity and technological development, but has kind of a big party scene. So they're a little bit laxer about the drugs as opposed to on Hurston. So you might not get as much trouble for running drugs in New Babbage than you would in Lorville.
And you can kind of go into the journals right now and read about the full jurisdiction and what they apply as you fly into that system. And we're hoping down the road to, move that into its own separate app possibly and give players a lot more information so that maybe you'll be able to check out the laws of where you're going without having to go there first. And all that kind of steps is planned.
And the fun thing too, hopefully, once we kind of can get into it a little bit more, is one of the things I remember we'd always joked about was the fun thing that, Hurston cracks down so much that something as arbitrary as blue jeans could be illegal on Hurston because they don't want you to basically buy anything they're not selling. So there's a lot of room, obviously, for us to develop it down the road as we get into more planets and more systems and more tech, basically.
So that's a brief look at the lore behind the law, except the other way around. And I think that does about it.
Lore behind the law.
Oh.
Hey, we're good.
Thanks so much.
Wrapping it up.
So fun fact, I'm not allowed to touch the coffee machine. So what we learned this week? We learned that landing zones begin their journeys in white box in much the same way our ships and vehicles do. That in game design, sometimes you want a thing to not work when needed to balance out the overclocking and abuse of components. And for life in the Stanton system, it's becoming just as important to consider how you interact with its NPCs as it already is with other players. To our subscribers, don't forget to check out July's issue of Jump Point magazine with a first look at some of the work being done on our new procedural space station interiors. And to everyone in the Star Citizen community, our continuing thanks for making all of this possible. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.